Thank you all for coming. My name is Michelle Crawford. I'm the Executive Director of Circle Salt Lake. I'm super excited to do this because this is only the second panel that our chapter has done. And when we did the first one in 2018, I was a volunteer. So I volunteered for the organization for 5 years and just stepped into my role as Executive Director January of this year. We're super honored because Councilwoman Aimee Winder Newton, this will be the second time that she's moderated a panel for us, meaning she's done all of the panels that we've done so far, and has been a huge advocate for Circles and what we do, which is lifting families out of poverty. One of the priorities that we have. The second priority we have is identifying and then addressing systemic barriers that trap people in poverty. And so that's why you're all here tonight. So we're gonna talk about the cliff effect. Aimee will walk our panelists through questions. They'll each introduce themselves first. We're gonna hold questions until the end. So in your handouts that you have, and it looks like everybody's scared of the front row. So anybody who comes late, I guess, has to fill in there. But in the handouts that you have, you'll see on the left side, inside, you've got a place for notes. So if you think of some things, I would love for you to jot those down so that if you do have questions, you don't forget what you wanted to ask when we get towards the end. Want to give a big thanks to our panelists who are here because it's really brave for them to get up and talk about their stories and their challenges. Of course, we're thankful to Aimee, but also to Josh Nelson, who was right there, our Big View chairperson, and Miles here, who is on our committee for Big View. So anyways, thank you everybody so much for coming. We're going to get things started now, and then we will wrap up about 10 minutes early with the panel questions to have the audience questions. Oh, and housekeeping, sorry. If you need a restroom, there's restrooms right down the hall here. There's 2 there, or you can go out to the main hall and down that way, and there's restrooms there too. Okay, water is here if anybody wants one. It's pretty informal. Don't feel bad about getting up and grabbing a water if you want. And I thought I was cute by getting Cliff Bars because it was the Cliff effect is the conversation tonight, and we're not, kind of in between dinner. So if you need a snack, don't hesitate to get up and grab something. Good. Okay, thanks everybody.
Oh. Okay. Thank you very much. So as we start, I want to talk for just a minute about why I think this panel is so important today. So I chair the Salt Lake County Intergenerational Poverty Task Force. And as we look at barriers for people to be self-sufficient and to be able to leave poverty, one of the things that we talk a lot about is the fiscal cliff. And that's when you're taking government benefits and you start to get raises, but then your benefits automatically drop off and you're kind of left in a desert is what we describe it as. So I think it's really awesome that these women are willing to talk to us today and share their personal stories. We're really lucky to have them willing to open up and to share what's important to them and some of the experiences they've had. And we hope that by sharing this, that we can share this videoed panel with policymakers who can make a difference. I know I've talked to some of our federal delegation about some of these things, and we need to keep talking about it. And so anyway, we'll go ahead and start with everyone introducing themselves. Emily, do you want to go first?
Sure. So my name is Emily Diaz. I'm a mother in long-term recovery. I'm married, and due to financial circumstances, me and my husband, we live separately. I hadn't always been in poverty, but circumstances have led me there, and I wanted the extra support to help bring me out of poverty and break the cycle for me and my children. When I joined Circles, I had a newborn baby. I was not employed, and so I was at 0%, and I've slowly built my way up to 90%. And yeah, that's who I am. Thanks.
All right, well, I'm Kristie. I'm a single mother that lives with my wonderful 8-year-old son. I live in South Salt Lake. I am one of the first cohorts of Circle Salt Lake. We started back in February of 2018. I joined because it was something offering support, no true boundaries, restrictions, such as emotional help, networking, no hard deadlines. I knew the woman that helped start Circle Salt Lake. She asked if I wanted to join, and apparently I did. And I started Circles in 2018, like I said, with 0% income. Ended up in the shelter 5 months later to signing my 4th lease with my apartment that I am currently in. and I am at 198% above poverty guidelines. Some barriers and challenges, stigma of assumptions from being homeless or insufficient because of receiving any true help or support from workforce, government, or many of the short-term programs. I am leading myself in one way by encouraging others that are downtrodden to know they can get out of the depths of this vicious cycle of the cliff effect and teach them to share their stories, because we need to know the complete truth of all these things.
Hi, I'm Chris, and I'm a domestic violence survivor. I joined Circles back in the first cohort too in 2018. I was living in transitional housing at the YWCA. I have since moved and have signed my 5th lease this year. And excuse me, I'm a single mom. I have 2 kids, both of them with special needs. My son passed away 6 years ago. But through Circles, I've had the support I've needed to help overcome some of the obstacles I've had. When I joined Circles back in 2018, I was at 0%. Today, I've reached the 238% above the federal poverty level. And I have turned down several promotions because of the cliff effect.
Sorry, I guess that means it's my turn. I'm Jess. I live in West Jordan. I joined Circles in the 2nd cohort in February of 2019. At that time, my husband had been diagnosed with colon cancer and we lost 2/3 of our income. So our family was sharing a house with another family. Our kids and their kids, and I think there were 12 of us in that house at that time. I was making 127% of the federal poverty level at that time. Since then, I am now at 222% of the federal poverty level, and my husband and I just bought our first house.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. Well, as you can see, we have some brave, wonderful women here, and I just have to give it a shout out to Circles. You know, I always tease Michelle because I always talk about how I think there's such good principles associated with what Circles does and how it aligns with a lot of the things that we're trying to do. But we are lucky to have this nonprofit in our community, because this isn't just about giving people something. It's about helping people be able to be self-sufficient themselves. And that's what we want to see. We want their contributions to our community, and we want them to be in a place where they can take care of their families. And so anyway, we're really lucky to have Circles. It's a great nonprofit. We appreciate those of you who are associated with this great organization and for your service. So thank you. Okay, let's start. Chris, you mentioned that you've declined promotions because you're worried about losing your government benefits. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm employed with Desert Industries, and I have been there at this time for almost 3 years. It shut down right after I started because of COVID, and when I went back to work after, I was offered a promotion and I declined it because then it would put me over the limit. And it's been offered probably 2 or 3 times. And the last time it was offered, my daughter was in a day treatment program that she needed help with some mental health issues, and she suffers from autism. And I had to decline it because it was a choice between that day treatment program or not getting it at all. And so I declined it. My boss at the time was a very amazing man, and he finally put me in an office and said, all right, this is what I can offer you. I think you're gonna be further ahead if you do this. But he also knew why I was finding those I was very open about it and said, no, I can't, because I need this, this, and this. And so last March is when I took this position and started working full time. I get my benefits and the 401k, and they help with education as well. So I wouldn't be sitting here graduated if it wasn't for that.
How did you know that you were going to be losing those benefits? Is that something like, did you know that from your caseworker or from looking at the guidelines, or how did you know that? Or did just a gut feeling? Like, how did you know that?
So with my son, because he was medically complex, I knew kind of the guidelines as to what was, especially for Medicaid, for what was those guidelines were. And so I kind of knew ahead of time that what I needed to make in order to cover those expenses. So I had done some maths and I looked at the website, which is really not a very easy website to find that information. If you've ever tried to figure that out, it's not an easy process. So it's between that and caseworkers that I've had and talking to different people.
Great, thank you. Kristie, do you have experiences with this? Do you want to talk a little bit about potentially, have you declined a promotion or raise because you were worried about losing benefits?
Well, no, the first experience I've ever had with the cliff effect, I was making $9 an hour and I got a different job and it only paid $2 more. And it made me lose everything. And I guess the easiest way for me to explain it is you got to think $2 an hour for a month. That's $320 extra dollars. I was getting food stamps at about $350. I was getting help with Medicare, with medical for me and my son. And then I had daycare. You put numbers to it, $350 for food, $350 for medical, and $500 for daycare. That's what I was getting. It's $1,200. I made $320 more and I lost all of that help. So I had that deficit instantly. And that was my first ever knowing of the cliff effect. And there was no warning. There was no, okay, well, you've got one more month. It was instant.
How did that impact your life when that happened?
Quite honestly, I lost my job because I couldn't get there because I didn't have enough money for rent and for transportation. So we ended up homeless. And it was in less than a month.
Does anybody else have any experiences with declining a raise or promotion that they want to
I
talk
have
about? Yeah.
another one. I was working at DID at the time again, and it was right after my son had passed away, and I made $20 too much to have my Medicaid cut, but I needed my antidepressants, and they were $587 out of pocket. And it was his birthday, so it was really, and it was his first that he was gone. So it really put me in a bad spot with my own mental health because of that. I ended up quitting because I couldn't, I just couldn't do it.
I'm so sorry. It's so hard to lose a child.
I would like to say something on this right now. So just going off of what Kristie was saying, like I feel for me right now, I'm living in fear currently because I'm not only in recovery from drugs, I'm also in recovery from coming off of being sex trafficked. So I deal with a lot of mental health issues. And I just recently took a job where I'm getting paid $3 more an hour. So I'm living in fear right now because I'm waiting to see how this is going to impact my life in all the ways. And it's not easy to navigate websites. It's not easy to get a hold of a case manager to help talk you through these things or help you figure out like what the limits are going to be. It's like another full-time job. So not only do I have the fact that I'm raising my kids. I'm working a job. I'm heavily involved in my recovery because if I don't put that first, then I can't be there for my kids. Then I have to go and put all these extra time and hours into just making sure that my benefits are stable. And the thought of just being cut off like that and in a month's time of me becoming homeless, that's a huge relapse trigger for me. And it puts me in an unsafe predicament as far as my past as well. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing that. Are there any other opportunities you've given up because of fear of losing government assistance, Emily?
I would say right now, I would say that I have definitely settled for a lot less than what I deserve in the last 7 years for fear of losing those benefits and for also fear of like it not working out. Like I had a job at one point at the VOA and all my benefits were cut off. And I was doing pretty good for a certain period of time, but then once they let me go, because of some mental health issues, like that was like a huge like trigger for me. And I'm grateful that I made it through that.
Anyone else want to talk about any other opportunities that were lost because of the fear of losing their benefits?
So our family, we were lucky enough that we didn't really experience most of the cliff effect issues that many of these ladies have. But because we made what we did, I made $6 too much per year to get any help at all. So when my husband lost his job, we lost our 2/3 of our income, we lost our home, we sold so many different things, we lost vehicles, we lost, basically anything that we could possibly give up. I was able to keep the house for a year, but I took 3 extra jobs to do that. On top of being a full-time student and my other full-time job. So we had all of these benefits through my job, but we didn't qualify for anything, even though we were a 1-income family for 6 people. So I ended up having to stay in a job that I could not stand for 7 years, just because I couldn't lose that medical coverage because my husband was literally using it constantly. And when our company was purchased, I ended up having to go to my boss in tears because we went from having a PPO health plan to an HSA health plan. And if it were just an HSA health plan, my family would have lost our home. So I go to my boss and I got a raise, which was great, but it still didn't cover everything that I was going to be losing. So we had to go through the healthcare marketplace, which was fabulous. We were able to get what we needed, but in order to do that, you have to make under a certain amount. And then for whatever you make, you get tax credits. So then when my husband's disability came through, we fought 4 years for disability to come through. And when it did, they gave us a back check, which meant that I then now owe $10,000 in tax credits from last year. So on top of that, though, we were able to find a housing option in an apartment complex where we still were just barely under that low income limit. But every year, that cost of living raise that you automatically get from your company would put us at, oh gosh, are we going to lose our apartment? And so, every year at July, I start worrying until the end of October when they're like, okay, you make, $1,000 less a year than what your max is. And so that is a ridiculous amount of stress on your shoulders, even when you're not worrying about, food stamps or childcare or anything like that. I mean, just to be able to keep medical care, but then also keep a home for your family it's very stressful.
So not only do we have the fear financially, but you've got the additional stress and worry and anxiety from worrying if how it's gonna affect your family. Does anybody else have any other stories related to how that fear of losing their benefits affected them mentally or emotionally?
Well, I'd like to add though, that like Chris was saying, because of all of this, I'm on anxiety and antidepressant medication. And my medication is not covered by that healthcare that my company was offering. And so not only was I running into issues where we would end up being homeless, I would also be paying $800 a month for one medication. And that's just not sustainable. And so, you know, had we had to go without that, I would have been not only homeless with my family, but in a very dark space on top of all of that. And it's a never ending cycle.
Thanks for sharing that. Emily, did you have something you wanted to say? Anyone else? Okay. So tell me, as far as your long-term goals, what are some of your long-term goals and have they been affected at all by this? Or you've been worried that, you know, you can't take a new job or something because of this? Have you had any experiences there? Yeah, go ahead. Chris.
Yeah, I too am on the Section 42 housing voucher or housing credit program. And part of that is because it's just me and my daughter. They can only have one full-time student in the home. So that has pulled me back from really being able to finish my goal of getting my bachelor's degree. Because that's been a goal I've been working on for a while. And I'm really close now, but it's held me back because I don't want to be homeless.
Tell us about your bachelor's. When did you graduate? What's your major?
I have two semesters left and I just got accepted into BYU Idaho. And so I'm looking at like family services.
Oh,
something.
awesome. Good for you. You will be awesome there.
So
That's great. Anyone else?
For
Yeah.
me, so I was also going to school for my associates in social work. And I had gotten really sick and I didn't have Medicaid at the time. And so I had to kind of like take a step back and do all those things, but it was just too much to be working a full-time job and then navigate the whole entire system and everything like that as well. So I lost track of mine. I'm sorry.
When you come back to it, tell me.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, anyone else?
I-
Yeah.
I do. My passion is cooking, love of cooking. But that doesn't bring in money. I would want to go to school to get the little techniques that just make everything fun. But like Chris said, I'm not on housing, but still to have two full-time students and not have an income. I couldn't do anything and that would just put my son in jeopardy of losing his home and everything else. And so I have to get a job, I have to pay for things. So doing my long-term goal, it's take care of the kid and I can't reach my goal until he's older. So it just becomes this vicious cycle of, like Jess was saying, being a job you don't like, doing something you don't want to be doing, but that's your only option.
So what I was, sorry about that. So I had got fired from the VOA and I was trying to go to school as well. So once I like got fired from the VOA and like that was where my passion was at, I was like in social work, that like set me back mentally, right? And it completely like changed the course of me even wanting to go back into social work because I felt like my mental health was used against me in that situation. And it was like I was going to school back to back semester after semester, and that was a lot. Like I was barely able to like make ends meet, struggling to like even feed my kids. I know that I would have to say that point, like I had the hardest time being able to feed myself and my kids. Pregnant, I was going to school, but because I was working for the VOA, I had the loss of benefits. I wasn't even able to feed myself and my family. I was basically having to go and get food donation boxes, and then COVID hit and all these things. And so it was just like a super like mental health breakdown for me. And so I had to completely take time off and really like, and that's the fear. Like those are the realities of me living with complex PTSD and trying to navigate myself in the regular world and be a productive member of society. And I have these opportunities and these benefits for a reason, right? But I'm still doing the best I can to become the best person I can be, right? But in situations like that, that was completely out of my control, like that was almost a make or break situation for me, right? And that can take me back into me being so vulnerable that I'm put in a position again to where that's what happened to me the first time, right? I was a vulnerable individual, and I feel like people that are vulnerable in these situations are taken advantage of to the fullest, so.
Can I throw something in here as well? So I had said that I worked this job that I couldn't stand for 7 years. An issue that we also ran into though is that because we do have 2 boys that are still at home with the housing situation, we had to work around that because we have 50-50 custody of the boys with my husband's ex-wife. And so she claims one of them every year on taxes, and we claim one of them every year on taxes. But per the divorce decree, we should be able to claim both of them, but we can't, because if we do, then we would have lost our housing. So in addition to that, though, one of them is turning 18 this month, which in that housing situation, he's now an adult. Even though he's a senior in high school, he just started his senior year. Now, if we were still in that apartment, and this is why we actually forced ourselves to buy a house that we really wish we had had more of a down payment for, was because now that he's going to be turning 18, he officially has to be then on the lease, which then means any income he has goes towards the income for the house, which would have no question put us over. We had no choice. So in a housing market where it's basically kind of ridiculous right now, you know, and on obviously completely unrelated, we had to replace our my husband's wheelchair van. So all of my deposit or down payment for a house that I had been saving up, working this job that I couldn't stand, trying to make sure that we were under this, you know, putting $50 away every month. All of that had to go for a down payment for a van so that he can just get to his doctor's appointments. And so in order to get ourselves into this house, I picked up probably, gosh, I mean, I was telling you guys I've worked all but like 2 days in June because I pick up shifts because I have to. So, and I mean, and luckily I'm in a job where I can pick up those shifts and I'm above that level where I can get benefits anyways, so I can use those hours towards that. But then again, that's going to come back and hit us on taxes and on other things. So
let's talk for a minute about what do you think the solution is to help with the fiscal cliff? Like what would help? What do you want your government officials to know that we could do to fix this and make it better for you so that you can leave poverty and be self-sufficient, but do it in a way that's less traumatic? Yes.
Well, first off, I would really like it to be not based on how much I make. I would like it to be based on what it is after taxes are taken out. I do know I have a tone, please excuse it. It is very irritating. Another would be I guess a quick explanation is you have to tell workforce that you've got a new job, you're making so much. You have to do that within 10 days. They have 10 days in which to reply, and that's when they'll cut you off if you hit the cliff. And you literally will lose it in the middle of the month. So you have until you have 2 weeks in which to pay rent, but you just got a new job and you won't get paid until the week after. So I think what they need to do is say, okay, you no longer qualify, but next month you get full benefits. The month after, we cut it in half, and the month after, a quarter, and then you're done. That would give people time to adjust to their new things, but also I would love for the math, I guess is the easiest way to say it. Like I said, the 320 to 1200, how is it that is something that is gonna help anybody to get out of needing the help? Is slowly do it and make the math work.
So your solution is if once you lose benefits, then the next month you still get the full benefits. You have time to transition. The month after that, half of it, and then the month after that, a quarter. And you think having those 3 months would help ease the pressure?
It would, because you are now getting the money that you didn't have before, and you have to physically, jumble everything into making sense, rent and food and bills. You have to go from having that help where it was taken care of to now it's on me.
Right.
And giving people just a couple of months to adjust while you're adjusting what they're getting will help.
That's great. Good suggestion. Yes, Chris.
My opinion or thoughts on that as well is like with health insurance, because not all health insurance is immediate. Some of it's 90 days, 6 months. I think that needs to be taken into consideration as well, rather than just cutting people off, because yeah, it's available, but not immediately. So then that can, like, I know from experience, the last day and a half of my son's life was $60,000. If there's an accident, how does that help people get out?
So maybe having something where instead it's on a case by case basis where they can look at what your employer is going to offer you for medical benefits and then help you get to where you're taking those benefits, even if it's longer than 30 days or 60
Right.
days. Okay. Yeah. Emily.
I definitely agree with it being a case by case situation, which I know will be hard because a lot of people in these places are have a high caseload, right? But I totally agree with tapering the benefits off. Like that would be super helpful because just because we're getting this job and this, we live in poverty. So we're inquiring debt every month, right? We're in debt. So I got this job with this raise. But I haven't been paying numerous of my bills on time, right? So it'd be nice to get caught up and to have the benefits just cut off completely. You're not able to even put yourself in a catch yourself up, right? So definitely tapering off the benefits. But as for me, I'm on Section 8 housing that I got because I was chronically homeless, and it came after an arrest where my son was removed from my custody. And that's the biggest fear for me, to lose my Section 8 housing, right? And I mean, that's what keeps me back from reaching my full potential. The second my baby's in actual school, I can go get a job, because what I'm doing now is I'm taking the time to educate myself and to get the education and the skills that I need so that I'm ready to make that move. But I mean, to have it on a case by case situation and have my case manager actually be I can't even get a hold of my case manager through housing right now to let them know that I've gotten a job where I'm getting paid more. I can't even get through to them. I don't even know if my case manager is still working there. I've had a numerous case manager every 3 months because they have such a high caseload, and so that's my biggest fear. And to be able to actually sit down with the human and be like, hey, look, this is my fear and these are my situations. And I'm trying to get myself out of being here, and them actually taking the time to be able to see that you're actually putting in the work to do that. Because there are a lot of people that aren't putting in the work, but I'm one of those people that is genuinely trying to put in the work. So I don't ever have to go back to the past that I went to, or that my children don't ever have to be put in a vulnerable situation where they're ever put in the situation that I was put in. Right. And so to have a case manager actually sit down and understand those things and be able to go on a case by case management, and say, hey, okay, you're making the amount and you're going to make over the amount to not have housing. Okay, that's fine. Allow me to try to be a decent member of society and pay the full amount of rent for, a good amount of months, but make sure I'm capable of doing that. Because I'm telling you right now, I think I'm capable of doing it, but any little thing in life that could throw me down. I'm going to be honest with you. That's a huge fear for me. And it's a huge fear that my kids, they don't deserve to have to go without a roof over their head because I was sex trafficked for 12 years and I'm mentally messed up because of it. And I'm trying to heal, right? They don't deserve to have to go through that.
So your ideas are, first of all, to look at it on a case by case basis and evaluate the situation, but then also have a tiered effect where you're basically easing out of benefits as your income increases.
Exactly.
I agree with that as
Yeah.
well. So we have programs that do similar things, take, for example, the lunch program for kids. You either qualify for complete free lunches or you qualify for reduced lunches or you don't. So we have stepped programs, but why is it that we only have certain ones? Why is it that not all of these programs go in that standard where everyone is able to say, okay, so now you've got a $2 raise and that's going to give you this much more a month. Let's adjust it so you have time to get used to that and time to actually cover that before we take more. And then, okay, now you've got another raise. Let's adjust it. So now we're giving you a little bit less and you can use yours and, learn those skills to be able to budget. I mean, and like Chris was saying, her son's medical bills were crazy. My husband's wheelchair costs more than my car. I mean, his wheelchair alone is $35,000 to replace. And we only have that wheelchair because we had already maxed our out of pocket for that year for our insurance. Otherwise, he would not have it. And when it comes down to things like that, I mean, you have generational poverty where you're trying to get your family out of things that, you learned as a child, like this is just how life is, and they're trying to get themselves out. Or you have situational poverty where, I mean, if it were up to me, my husband would be perfectly healthy and we'd be living the life that we had already had, but obviously things happen. But in that put us into this situational poverty where we have to now climb ourselves out. If that van goes down, his van, a minivan that normally costs like $20,000 is $55,000 used, because it's a $30,000 conversion to be able to put his chair in the back of it. These things are not covered by any kind of coverage. Your health insurance doesn't care if you can leave your house. They just want to make sure you can use the bathroom and feed yourself. That's it. So as far as, what Medicare and Medicaid will cover, they don't cover anything but the necessities. So, I mean, if he needs to get to a doctor's appointment, I would have to take off work to take him. And I would have to then transfer him into the car, take him to the hospital, get a chair there, take him out of the car. And this takes time and hours and hours and hours of your day. And you don't get enough PTO to cover that. And so when you're in these situations, you have to find a way to cover your bills, but also still be able to get to these appointments. And it's just not possible.
So you had mentioned something, Jess, that I think was interesting. You said something about learning how to do the budgeting and finances and
Yeah.
all of that. Do you guys feel like there's sufficient help for people in poverty to learn how to do their finances and how to budget and how to do that? Or where are
No.
gaps there?
So Circles does offer that.
Right.
So it's something that we learned as circle leaders going through the academy in Circles. So that was really helpful for me, but it was not something that I was taught. I mean, my parents we never wanted for anything. We were a middle-class home. My dad worked blue collar in HVAC. He was a service guy. He was always gone, but he worked as much overtime as he needed, and we never wanted for anything. My mom stayed home until my sister went to kindergarten. I didn't come from a spot where I knew what any of this was. And because I made too much, $6 too much a year, I got zero help. I didn't have someone who could walk me through this process. I mean, everybody makes mistakes in their budgeting, right? You're young, you're in your 20s and you want to go on a trip. So you get that credit card and you buy that trip and you max that credit card. And then you're like, oh, crud. Now what do I do? Right? So I had that bankruptcy that most people are at least come close to in their 20s, right? So it wasn't something I was ever taught. I mean, my kids go to a charter school now, and their school just this year started requiring for graduation for seniors to go through a financial literacy class. They have no choice. You don't get a diploma unless you complete that class, and you have to pass it. And I wish that was something that was more accessible to others, but especially people in situations like this. If you are receiving benefits, I think it would be beneficial for you to also receive training on how to use those benefits to your advantage and help you stay out of a situation that's going to be worse.
The programs, when you're in the kind of situations that she was referring to, there are programs that do help. But the thing is that they're very cookie cutter. They say, okay, you need to save, you need to save, you need to save. They don't even look at what you make, what your bills are. And so it's, you need to pay all your bills and save. Well, my money's gone. I have $5 to my name. So it would be definitely something that needs to change in a way that it does need to look at, okay, so you make this much, maybe you can get help with this, and that way you can save that. Because the programs I've been into, it's literally, you've got to save.
Can I say something? Sure. I think that's where Circles has been amazing with being able to sit down and to look at that budget and to write it out and see where you can, or if you can't do that here, to find a resource that can help you. I think, because my thoughts too was case management is so overloaded. There needs more case management. But I think that's where Circles has lifted at least me up out of being able to find those resources. Like I was telling Michelle, I think Circles makes the impossible possible.
It's awesome. It's a pretty good endorsement, Michelle. Tell me about your kids. Are you guys worried about your kids being in poverty someday? Like, what are you doing to help your kids?
I'll tell you what I'm doing for my
Yeah.
kids. So. I'm definitely not worried about my kids living in poverty because I feel like every day I fight extremely hard to make that possible for them. So I'm a first generation college student. My plan is to go back and finish my associates. I only have 3 more classes to do that. So one, as I'm showing my kids that is possible. And also, I've looked into a charter school for my son as well, because I know that for me, I can't afford to pay for a private school. My son is educated enough that he deserves better than a public school. So I got him and my stepdaughter put into the Utah Military Academy Charter School down in Lehigh, and they have a really hard day ahead of them because we live in Salt Lake City. They get up and they leave the house by 5:40 in the morning, and they take Front Runner and they get down to school and they come home. They're home about 5 p.m. But I'm doing that because they deserve that opportunity, right? They deserve an opportunity to have small class sizes and to have a better education. And it's a Air Force JROTC school. So if they want to make the decision to go into the military for scholarships or to pay for their college, like I know that I'm providing them that, because that's one of the huge things that was for me. Was I went to school, I got great grades, and my dad kicked me out. I didn't know how to go to college out of that, and I was vulnerable. So just breaking the cycle, and I'm very open with them about finances and about just being responsible with choices and how our choices have consequences, and being responsible with finances. And I'm teaching them how to be self-sufficient right now. So
It's awesome. Good for you. Anyone else want to comment on that?
I'm not worried about my kids. I think that, not that my parents did anything wrong by helping us make sure that we were earning those things, but we didn't see what things cost, and we didn't see where that money was going or coming from. But we earned those things. So I had a good base. But my kids are seeing us struggle, and they're seeing their mother and stepfather also, go through their things. And especially on our side with my husband's medical problems, they're seeing us navigate all of those things and do what you have to do. Because sometimes, everybody is like, oh, I can't wait till I'm an adult and I can go and I can buy a lottery ticket, or I can rent a car, or I can go have a beer, or whatever it is that you want to do when you're an adult. But nobody talks about all of those responsibilities that come along with that. And so in our situation, we're showing our kids, these are the responsibilities. They see that we just bought this house, but guys, I know that the bed that you had before was a loft bed. Well, it's not gonna fit in that room that's up in the attic now. So, I'm sorry that you don't have exactly the bed that you want. We can't just go and buy you a brand new bed today, but you have your box spring, you have your mattress, and this is what our option is for right now. And they see that sometimes you can't just go out and buy those things right now. You have to find where that money is going to come from. But we also, our bank, we use a credit union, and they have an option where we can give our kids a debit card that comes off of our account. And so we do, we do exactly that. If they do something that I wouldn't want to do, like pick up the dog poop from the yard, right? I don't want to do that. I'll pay my son $5 to go ahead and do that for me because I don't want to do it. But I put it on his card because then he can take that card and he can use it towards whatever he wants. But he also knows that there's a limit, because the way it's set up through the bank is once he takes and uses, he can't use it past what's already on it. That's it, period. It's like a prepaid card. So he's learning that because he has what's available to him and nothing more.
Well, they're learning delayed gratification
Mhm.
and they're learning financial management skills. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I have an 8-year-old. And so one thing that I've been trying to teach him, because he's a normal 8-year-old kid, I guess, hates math, hates math. But he has some huge aspirations for the longest time. Sorry, anybody that knows Trev is giggling right now. It's terrible.
No, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
Great.
We can just pick the main one that has been part of his life. He wanted to be a paleontologist. Well, you want to be a scientist, you have to do math. So it's teaching him now that his choices of doing something or not doing something will affect later. And that is something that I wasn't taught, something that I've learned very hard growing up, but your choices do make a difference in one way or another. So he's learning that math is okay and he'll have to deal with it all the way through college, and then he can go find all the dinosaurs he wants. But yeah, so it's just teaching him that choices do have consequences. It's great.
I do a lot with the same with Jess. She actually told me about that program that she does with her kids. So I went and did that with my daughter, and she sees a lot that most people she doesn't interact with. She might be that wallflower over there, but she takes it all in. So we often go for drives because that's when I can get her to open up and talk to me. And that's what she'll talk about money and what's good and what's bad and what needs to be paid and what you have to wait for. She too has a debit card that she can take with her and get those things that she wants. But she also has to save for it.
Love that.
That works out really nicely also, by the way, for anybody who needs it. If you have a teenager, it is fabulous. My son just got himself a car and I can be like, hey, why don't you pick up dinner on your way home? I'll put money on your card.
Yeah.
Works out really well.
That's awesome. So we're almost out of time. So we've just got a few minutes left. I want to hear from each of you. What should our main takeaway be? If you wanted government leaders or the people here in this room to know something from this tonight, what would it be? Who wants to go first?
I think
Go ahead.
I'll take that. I think that we're not lazy. We want those things. Sometimes it's circumstances that put us here that we have no control over. Doesn't mean that we can't get out. But I think having people in your lives be those cheerleaders makes a huge difference.
The assumptions that we are wanting to stay in the system, that we don't want to get out. The easiest way to say it is get over it. It's not real. This is not just a Utah problem. This is nation. This is a problem for the entire United States. It is not a small problem. It is a big problem. Just know that something needs to work so that we can get out of needing the help, but also sustain life, just a normal life. We're not expecting to be on it forever, but something has to change and you guys can help.
Thanks.
I believe that the cliff effect really does keep individuals from reaching their full potential. So I feel that support is needed to help people stop living in fear to come out of poverty, right? To be able to reach their full potential.
The key point I want people to understand, and part of the reason that now that I've graduated, I am now part of the support here at Circles. The biggest thing though is that people need to understand that we're just people. And, you know, we've fallen on hard times, or we grew up in a situation that we weren't taught how to be better than where we are. But it's not a crime and it's not a failure on anybody's part. It's just, we're just people that are trying to do our best and have a life that is worth living, and working and trying so hard to keep all of these benefits and everything just in order to survive is not living. It's just surviving.
Thank you so much for doing this tonight. You guys are a great example of resiliency. That's what you are. And that you can do hard things. So you're inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks for being here for us.
Thanks.
I agree. I love these women so much. And in our audience too, we have more circle leaders and we have some of our allies and volunteers. So thank you to all of you for being here and being vulnerable with us and sharing. And then for those of us who are here to support, Circles is mostly a volunteer-led initiative. So we really couldn't do it without our volunteers. So thank you guys. To you. I love you. All right. So I was going to say 10 minutes for Q&A, and then Josh, who chairs our Big View committee, will come up with some closing remarks. And I wanted to say, but let's give these gals a second to breathe and maybe show them some appreciation. And you guys already did that with your applause. So thank you. So let's open it up. What questions do you guys have? Could be anything. I mean, we're trying to stay on cliff effect, but I mean, questions about circles. Yes, Nick.
I have a question. So you spoke about how difficult it is to access information, you to access benefits. How much administration do you have to go through to actually keep all of that going? How much time do you have to spend? How many passwords do you have to remember?
Well, I'll start by the fact that I haven't even been able to get a hold of my housing case manager for the 3 weeks that I've been employed at my job, so that I can let her know, hey, look, I have a new job and how can I go about, you know, because you got to get a paper from the old job saying you don't work for him, and then you got to get a paper from the new job. And it's like, can I just talk to you and let you know that I just left this job, like not under bad terms, but I didn't give a 2-week notice. I don't want to have to go back in there and take this paper, but I have started, like, I can't even get any questions answered because I go through the directory, you can't get a hold of anybody. And this is like the roof over my head that we're talking about. You know what I mean? So let's start there. Like, I haven't even fathomed the idea. I'm just sitting here, like I said, I'm just like, oh, I'm just flying by the seat of my pants, waiting to see what's about to come when they figure out, because I'm trying to do my part and tell them, but you know, I can't get a hold of anybody. So.
And the other part of that is, I learned during COVID, even though I have a smartphone, the Utah Department of Workforce Services, you can't use your smartphone to give them information or to get information. So I think that needs to be changed, because everything has to go through a computer system on their part. And so when COVID hit, if you didn't have a scanner or whatnot, you couldn't do those. And I think where we have access to this technology, I don't understand why we're not using that. Almost everybody I know has a phone that can do things.
But how many of us have a scanner?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's apps for that.
Yeah, but another thing with workforce, like you were asking, how long? If you have to call, like she said, anytime you get a job, you have to go get a form and take it to HR or whatever. Have them fill it out saying, yeah, I'm getting benefits. But then you get fired or you quit, you have to go back to that same job and say, here, fill this out for me too. So that takes that time, plus any paperwork that you have to do on a yearly takes a good 20-30 minutes as long as you do it online. And then when you call to ask a question, you can be on the phone up to 2 hours. And their hours are during normal work hours, so you have to leave your job to talk to them to keep your benefits going.
And I work
Kristie,
nights.
Is that
So that's
because
not
you're on hold for a
Yes.
long time, or is
Yes.
that how long it takes to talk to somebody?
That's how long you're on hold waiting to talk to somebody.
Unless you call first thing in the morning, the first person that calls right in the morning, and then you got to remember to do that on your way, dropping your kids off at school and doing all those things.
And the problem is that they will not let it connect until the time that they open. So they open at 8, you
So there's
cannot
no
call.
camping out the night before
You cannot.
to get on the phone.
Or
cannot
5
call.
minutes before.
You can't call 7:59. It will kick you out and hang up.
So
You have to call at 8.
that's a big problem for people like me because I work nights. So I get off work at 6:30 in the morning. I have to get my kids to school. Luckily, at this point, they're driving themselves, but by 8 o'clock in the morning, when they open, I'm asleep. And I have to be back up and ready to go to work and be there at 6:30. So I work a 12-hour shift. I then have to stay up until whenever it is that they answer. And I mean, obviously, I don't do that for as many of these things, but like even medical offices are the same way. You can't call after hours and leave a message and actually get somebody to call you because it'll be 24 to 72 business hours before someone calls.
It's a great question, Nick. Does anybody have other questions for these gals? Okay,
How did you hear about Circle and, how did you seek other programs that maybe were the same day, but like, who was it? Like library, caseworker, you were able to get a hold of them?
So for me, I think I was just scrolling through Facebook, and I had seen the Circle Salt Lake. I had worked with an employee, at the VOA who told me about circles out in Davis County. So I had somewhat of an idea about it. And then I was like, seeing the Facebook ad, I was like, oh, okay, cool. A support group to help me get out of poverty, right? I'm very familiar with support groups and how much they've been helpful in my recovery. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like I have recovery groups and support groups for like my drug addiction and these things. And like, let's get one to help me bring myself out of here, right? Because I feel like you gain more knowledge and you're better able to help yourself when you're surrounding yourself around people who understand what you're going through.
I knew, like I mentioned in my introduction, I knew the lady who started the chapter. I had met her in the shelter and she asked, the other programs, I've literally been on programs to help, and I will put those in quotations, there's so many things wrong, from workforce, from housing, from the shelter, things that they shove at people all the time. And none of them are more than 3 months or 6 months, and they don't help.
So my Relief Society president had been to a presentation about circles. And so they encouraged several families in the ward to join. And that's how I heard about it, but I also heard about it at the YWCA.
I saw a post by a Facebook friend who actually, I believe, is the same gal Kristie is talking about. I saw it on her Facebook. She said that they were looking to start another cohort, and I sent her a message and I said, I don't know if we qualify, because my kids, we share 50-50 custody, and she's talking about family. It's like, do I qualify? I don't know. I mean, we have a family, but we only have a family half the time. So I just messaged her and she hooked me up with somebody who could answer my questions.
I would love to answer that question too, if I can. So I heard about circles from one of the founding members who was part of the original staff. And she'd asked me if I would come volunteer with Circles, and I told her no, because I had way too much on my plate. But when you asked about like what different services, right, that are out there and how you find those or get connected to those. So that's what really got me involved in Circles, was learning that this was a long-term until the end of poverty for these ladies, right? So it can be the minimum commitment they make is 18 months, but they can stay for 3 or 4 years. Like, I'll keep them as long as they're participating and want to be here, right? They need arms wrapped around them. We will always keep our arms wrapped around them. Kristie, you have to stop because you're going to get me. But so that's what Circles is. So while there are these short-term programs that are available out there, and we have some frustrating situations with Department of Workforce Services, but we also understand too that they have major caseload right now, always have it, but even more so probably now. And so we absolutely appreciate the programs and the services that help our participants manage being in poverty. The goal of Circles is to help alleviate poverty, so to get them all the way out of poverty. So that's what really got me into it. And we are constantly looking for other services. So if you're a service provider in the room, absolutely connect with us, because we know that it takes the whole village, right, to wrap around our participants. And so, I mean, I know we've got some people in the room that some of our families are part of too. And so we're not where we want to compete with other services. Like, I want all of them. We need to wrap it. And if yours is a short term, 3-6 months, that's okay, because we've got these gals until they're done, right? But if they need that temporary help somewhere else, then we're there.
Well, and I think it's important to make sure that everyone's aware, though, is that whether we have frustrations with the services or not and the programs, we appreciate every single bit of help that we can get. You know, you hear all those horror stories where somebody's like, oh, well, you know, they're not really trying. They're just enjoying all these benefits that they have, and it's just fine. They're just skating by. And that's not the case. We appreciate the help that we do get when we can get it. So yes, it does take weeks to get a hold of someone, but when we get a hold of those people, they do these amazing things for us, and we can definitely appreciate that. We do understand that they're working with other people, not just us, but I think it's important to know that there is this frustration, because we're trying, but it's not something that is just like an overnight fix.
Okay, so with that, if you have questions that you didn't get to ask, I have note cards over here, and I'd love for you to write them down so that we'll absolutely get back to you and answer your questions. I'm going to pass it to Josh now to wrap us up. Thank you all so much for coming. I wasn't kidding about the Cliff Bars. Like, they're there. So take one on your home or a bottle of water.
Well, thank you all for taking time of your evening to join with us and be with us. Panel members, thank you so much. I've had the blessing and honor to get to know some of them and some of their stories. There's a lot more they could have said. I almost wanted to ask more questions to pull out some of the things that they've told me. But your lives are heroic. It's a full-time job to be in poverty. That's what I've learned. It's a full-time job to try and stay qualifying for all these benefits, plus do everything else you got to do. So I'm a volunteer with Circles. I got involved in February in a role that's called an ally. An ally works with a circle leader who is the leader in leading themselves out of poverty. And it's an inspiring thing to be associated with people who are doing their courageous work. But then a second element of Circles is to focus, like we have this evening, on what we call the big view. The big view is the systemic problems or challenges or opportunities for improvement that could be put in place, or coordinating all these marvelous programs in a little better way, or using technology to make the eligibility requirements be more synced up or less confusing or whatnot. So that's the goal of this evening. It's been very enlightening. And thank you for all you have to contribute. And I'm also equally impressed with my short involvement with Circles has put me in contact with some of the work that you guys do in your agencies. And it's just quite impressive. It's not recognized in the media. This isn't cool soundbite stuff. The media often shows the extreme and the not so great parts of humanity. This is the great part of humanity. So thank you for being here. Thank you again for your courage. And that's it. Thank you. And